Right, let's go back to our main story now, and a heartbreak for the family of Miguel Lowe. They're waiting to identify a body found near the Durban home of the man accused of kidnapping the 10-year-old. This won't happen today, though. eNCA's Dasen Thathiah has the latest in Phoenix, Durban for us. Dasen, good morning to you. Perhaps let's start with why the family of Miguel Lowe will not be identifying the body that was found yesterday.
Well, Polly, that body that you're talking about was quite in an advanced state of decomposition when it was discovered yesterday. And initially, we had thought that there would be an identification that would take place today. But we've just spoken to the KZN Provincial Communications Department for the police, and they say that that will only happen after the post-mortem, which takes place tomorrow. So that means that there's going to be at least another 28 to 48 hours for that family before they know, in fact, whether it is Miguel Lowe. Now, police had made that link between the body that was found here, and I'll just ask Sandile to pan to my right and show you the scene while I continue to talk to you. They made the link because that body was still dressed in what resembled school clothing. And now you'll remember when Miguel was taken from his school on July 17th, or at least after school, he was still dressed in his school uniform. So police are being quite cautious in officially confirming that link. They're saying that they can only do that once they have DNA samples and once they get the results of the post-mortem back. But for now, it seems like that family will just have to wait a little bit longer. But one of the other things, Koli, is that yesterday this happened completely coincidentally, that discovery that we're talking about, because police had not initially come here to look for a body in this area. In fact, they had come here along with a local security company as well, responding to a business robbery not far from where I'm standing now. In fact, just about 100 meters or so up the road. And it was there that they found out that the suspects had made their way into the bush behind me, and they continued their search here. In fact, I spoke to a member of that security company, Romano Naidu, earlier on today, and he shared with us how that search actually went down.
So, Dasen,
Control room received several calls of business robbery where owner has been stabbed, where they needed medical assistance. So units were dispatched onto scene. I got here myself. Then as we responded to scene, I called a member from the dog unit, Colin, who was from Search and Rescue, who I just met early on in the day, so I knew that he was in Phoenix. So I gave him a call and told me, listen, there's a business robbery. He was here in a couple of minutes. Then members of the community showed us and pointed us in the direction of where the suspects fled. Colin, myself and Ellis from the dog unit entered the bush, which we were in pursuit of the suspects. As we were going into the bush, the police dog, which led us in the path, but we turned left. The dog led us there to the body, which was found into the bush.
So, Dasen, the family members, I understand, Miguel Lowe's family members, some of them were gathered at the scene last night when this body was discovered. Did you have a chance to speak to them just to find out how they're holding up since his disappearance some 6 weeks ago?
I didn't get a chance to speak to them yesterday, Koli, but from what I understand is that they were quite distraught. In fact, they didn't really want to speak to anyone. Some of the family members had to be comforted while they were here at the scene, and they were led away, in fact, a short while after, just as that body was taken away by pathology services. I also tried to get in touch with them today, but as you can understand, it is quite a traumatic time for them, so it's understandable that they aren't really taking any calls at the moment. But you know, the family has really been involved and really been actively trying to find this little boy since he was taken in July, and they had started a social media campaign. They put out posters. There was even a night vigil. There were also some false alarms. There was supposedly a sighting of Miguel in Wentworth last week, and there was a search party that was called out as well. And all of them, in fact, the aunt, the mother, the grandmother, had their phones on 24 hours a day, and also then fielding a lot of hoax tip-offs during this time. So as you can understand, they had that hope that this child would be found. We spoke to them outside court last week, and that was when the accused, Mohammed Ibrahim, had appeared last week. He was granted bail of 2,500 rand, although he still remains in custody because he wasn't able to raise that money. But even there outside the court, there was a protest, and once again an appeal when I spoke to the aunt, an appeal to anyone who may have the child to come forward. They'd also put out a reward of 50,000 rand if Miguel was found safe and sound. So you can imagine, especially with that hope that they had leading up to this discovery yesterday, you can just imagine what that family is going through at the moment, Koli.
Just finally and very quickly, Dasen, talk to us about this very prime suspect, the police's prime suspect in this case. It's the very person you mentioned, 43-year-old Mohammed Ibrahim. Was he positively linked to this crime by the police, or is it something that they're still investigating?
Well, it's definitely something that they're still investigating. Now, Paulie, the state's case in this matter, remember, he's charged with kidnapping and theft. Now, the kidnapping relates to Miguel Lowe and the theft relates to his identification documents. Now, the state's case is really hinged on this CCTV footage, which was sourced from a restaurant near the child's school as well as his home. So this restaurant really falls between those two locations. And that footage shows that Ibrahim was with Miguel on the day that he was taken away, and he bought him a meal at the restaurant and then walked across the road to catch a taxi. Now, the point of contention here is whether he actually got into the taxi with the child or not. The magistrate in this case says that it really looks like it's circumstantial evidence at this point. You'll know that Ibrahim has previously denied any wrongdoing. He says that yes, he was with the child on the day, but at the point which you can't really see on the CCTV footage, where he was getting into a taxi, he claims that he and Miguel parted ways. And now, that is something that still will, more details of that will come out in court, but some very damning words from the magistrate saying to the state during that bail application that if they were to go to trial with the evidence as it stands, they would very easily get a not guilty verdict. But you can imagine speculation is rife, Polly, because of the location of where this body, this as yet unidentified body, was found, because it's only 100 or 150 meters away from the accused's parents' home. Now, I went into the home earlier and I wanted to speak to his family, and look, they didn't want to speak to me on camera, but what they did say is that they had disowned Ibrahim over the past few years. He did come to the premises occasionally. He lived in a Wendy house at the front of the house, but they really had nothing to do with him. So they can't say whether he was involved. All they know is that he was an acquaintance of the child's mother, and he had been spending some time with her over the weeks preceding the kidnapping. But they also said that the family had gotten a bad name over the time that Miguel had been missing, and they'd been receiving threats, and they too are grieving, and their hearts are with the Lowe family during this time.
Live for us in Durban, in the area of Phoenix. Thank you very much, Dasen Thathiah, for that update. Watching that developing story, the family of Miguel Lowe, which expects to identify a body that was found yesterday. We're not sure yet when that identification process is going to take place.